Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon in Portland. It's Pacific. I'm here in Vegas actually, so it's a little bit different environment. I've got this gaudy wallpaper behind me, but I don't have gaudy folks coming up. In a moment, I'm really excited to introduce you to somebody that I find so dynamic and inspiring, so bet you will too. Before we get started though, I need to thank my sponsors, 5-Star Guitars. 5-Star is based in Beaverton, Oregon, and there are no sales tax markups in Oregon. So you can go to this link below, 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive. You'll get 15% off everything you see there if you use the promo code of allaccess15. You're going to find lessons and repairs and incredible deals, lessons from pros like Jennifer Batten, who just happens to be having her Guitar Cloud Symposium. You know Jennifer from her days with Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck. She has a Guitar Cloud Symposium that offers instruction for a 4-day symposium from the world's greatest guitarists. There's a rotating cast. This next event is in June, featuring Robin Ford. She's had Steve Lukather and Steve Vai, Dweezil Zappa, so many great guests in the past. So sign up at guitarcloudsymposium.com. Let her know that I sent you and get lessons from her if you go to 5-Star Guitars. So now, before we get started, I do want to say that tomorrow on this show at this time, we've got Powerman 5000 drummer Adrian Ost, and then on Friday, Tom Weber, the guitar tech from Eddie Van Halen. So we're going to talk about the late, great Edward Van Halen, all of his experiences on the road, and so more inspiration all week. But before that, we've got two incredibly dynamic women, both in Singapore. I've got SARA PAZ and RENEE WELSH. How are you guys doing? There they are, bringing them in. Renee and Sarah, good to see you guys.
Hey, hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is morning for you. That's right. You guys, I appreciate you getting up so early. You're both in Singapore. It's oh my goodness. I think when I first asked you, I was going to try and make it more convenient for you and work out our hours, but now it's just a jump on your day, right? So early weekend. And there's some, I mentioned that I was in Vegas this week, so you have your attire on just for us. I appreciate that.
It's only 6 a.m. in the morning, but who doesn't appreciate a little ruffle in the morning?
You know what? I actually had that on earlier, but I kept having people take pictures with me thinking I was a Tropicana dancer. But, so Sarah, we met initially. Yeah. I was on my way back from Thailand. We had a long flight leg where it went by as if it was minutes. You have so much fun personality, a lot of life experiences. One of the things that I remember about that conversation was just your enthusiasm, your exuberance for life. And I know that on social media, you just celebrated a big birthday and wanted to make sure that that birthday didn't define you in any age, right? So ageism is one of those things that you guys are both proudly just disregarding. Before we get into like your sort of like your backgrounds, and I want to talk to you about your individual backgrounds. I was reading about your organization, Crone Queen, that you put together, and I loved some of these taglines behind it. We uncompromising power of authenticity. We're governed by a socially reformative idea. As we age, we get better and better at being our true authentic selves, our best selves, living our best lives. Regardless of whether you're in your life journey or in your first chapter or entering your third life chapter, a stay-at-home parent or a corporate warrior or an empty nester plotting your next move, everyone aspires to live a meaningful life. Everyone wants to live and wants to be good at life. So what I know about you is that you're both fantastic at life. And then one of those things that I strive to go after, and I think most people do. So let's start with you, Sarah, since you and I had this conversation. You're originally a California girl.
That's right. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having us on your show. I love this platform. I love how you took a situation like the pandemic and said, hey, you know what? I may not be able to be in front of an ocean of people performing, right? And I love some of the imagery as well that I've seen on your feed from like when you were on the road all the time, because that's how we met, right? We were like, I was on the road for work, and so were you, but you just happened to be with a band living an incredible lifestyle, whereas I was a corporate warrior. And so anyway, what I love some of the imagery in which you're drumming, right? You can tell that the photographer is right behind you and captures you in action. And then on the stage, you have the rest of the band. And then in front of the band is an ocean of people. And I could just, and, you know, in some of that imagery that I've seen of you on tour with different bands, is you could just tell that there's all this energy that's coming, you know, it's just symbiotic, and it goes both ways from the band to the audience and whatnot. And so anyway, thank you for that slice of inspiration, and also for taking the time during the pandemic to say, hey, I want to still bring the light. I still want to bring inspiration, and I'm going to, you know, do all access live. I love I love everybody that you have on the show. But of course, for me, it's like flashback when I see, you know, downtown Julie Brown, you know, one of my favorite VJs of all time. So anyway, love your platform. Thank you for having us on. And just to introduce myself, my name is SARA PAZ, and I'm originally from California. I'm actually originally from Mexico. So I lived in Tijuana, Mexico for some time. I did most of my education in California. And then after that, I just, as we discussed, and when we met on the plane and hit it off, you know, I just hit the road. And I've kind of lived all over the world ever since, mostly for work and chasing work, right? And I've mostly been in technology. And I think that if I'd like to introduce Renee, because I know she won't introduce herself this way because she's far too humble. But Renee Welsh is originally from Australia. She's lived all over the world as well for work, right? And also for play and pleasure. And she's a serial entrepreneur. So she would never introduce herself like that because she's too humble. But basically, she is a serial entrepreneur that had her first startup in her 20s and has continued, you know, starting these companies, building these companies, selling them. And of course, now she is the CEO of the company. It's a cloud-based software solutions company. And she is the CEO of the company, and she has a perfect gender parity on the executive team. And the reason why that is important to mention, because it's such a source of pride for myself and for her, is that generally when you know, if you just look at some of the metrics, it's staggering. You know, only 15% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. And especially if you look at technology, that percentage goes down even more. Sure. And when you look at the chief executive teams, you never have a 50%, you know, leadership team at any of these companies, which is why so many, you know, high-tech companies have like these developing women, right? And like, in all these different organizations, whereas when we in programs and when we looked at our company, and I can't believe it, because when she came in as CEO, the company had never had, in its 20-year history, never had a female CEO, and there wasn't any females on her chief executive team. And then she steps in, and within a year, she's got 50% gender parity, which is what other companies, small and large, aspire to achieve. And, you know, with the work that we did with our team, it was just absolutely incredible. And of course, it's all credit to her because she's our fearless leader. So there you go.
I don't even need to introduce myself. I know, isn't that an awesome setup?
Oh,
thank you.
The parody thing was fantastic because it's something I do want to touch on in a moment. I'm interested, Renee, when you came into the company as CEO, tell me a little bit about where you were at before and walking into an organization where, as the CEO, you know, you're in charge of that new development. So tell me about where you came from.
So it's an interesting story. We actually, my husband and I started up our own business in sort of mid 2000s, and we were acquired by the company that I now am CEO of. So it's that wasn't really part of the original plan. We loved, you know, when we were trying to raise money for Series C for our startup, this company came to us and were really interested in investing. And then as it transpired, I think we shared very similar family values. Obviously, we were a family organization. My husband and I started it. My mother worked for the company. We had a lot of sweat equity from our family in our startups for sure. But then as we sort of moved through the transition process and that acquisition, I was fortunate enough to be asked to run the organization. And so we were brought to Singapore, and as part of that acquisition and as part of that role change, and I stepped into the CEO role and integrated my company into BookieBoss, into this company, Embed. So look, it's been a fantastic journey. It's been, I've felt incredibly empowered by the board, and they're, you know, all for, you know, diversity and women in business. And I'm very grateful for that, because it's enabled me to make some really significant changes throughout the organization to make us more scalable and agile and to really ensure we've got the diversity that we need across the board in all of the regions that we operate in. So yeah, that's my journey.
I'm interested to know, when you first started the company, Renee, were you, because it was a family-based company, were you in Australia when you started the company?
We were, yes, we were.
Okay.
So my husband and I met 16 years ago at work. I've worked for startups, as Sarah said, most of my career in very disruptive industries. So I worked for the first online recruitment company. I worked for the first online travel company. So I earned my startup stripes. And then when I met my husband, who is a software engineer and very skilled at that, we decided we were going to go out on our own and try something new. Little did we know that we would also, in that time have a startup. So we were, just completely immersed in trying to grow a business. We had 2 children in that time as well,
Oh my gosh.
which throws all these other factors that you've got to try and juggle. And so it's been those, I guess, 4 to 5 years were a significant pivotal moment in my life in so many different ways. But the epitome of that was being able to sell some of our companies, and this last acquisition was a real triumph, and we're very proud of that fact. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying still being on the journey, I have to say, because being invited to be CEO and still being able to grow the business with the backing of a larger company has been exceptional.
That's right.
I'm interested to know, in that acquisition, did the acquisition require then the company to move to Singapore? So
we still have our offices in Australia, but our headquarters is in Singapore.
Okay.
So we moved 3 years ago now to Singapore, and it's been quite a journey. The first 2 years, I definitely was the corporate warrior. We're all on planes and traveling all over the world to transform and grow our company. And then COVID hit, and I'm in a country where I didn't really have any connections or any friendships here because I'd been traveling so much. And so, I was looking around. I mean, obviously that whole pandemic period was, extremely stressful, and we work in the entertainment business. So, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, really?
But, exactly. But yeah, I found myself just sitting here thinking, okay, well, how am I going to start growing my network, making connections here, and building up that side of my life again. So that brings us to, Crone Queen and the discussion Sarah and I had.
Okay, so yeah, now that's a perfect transition. But before I do bring up Crone Queen, in the chat, I see that Claudia Odenthal, who is a incredibly dynamic business owner in Bonn, Germany right now. So she's staying up late to see this as well. And I'm glad she's here because she, like you, Sarah, somebody that I met when I was out on the road, and just blows my mind with her zest for life. And so, all right. So Claudia, take notes. Let's talk about Crone Queen. Tell me about how position then came about, your organization. Sarah.
Well, I'll take it away. So I think that something just to touch on a point that Renee made, it is a tremendous pride to be able to, harness the power in not only gender diversity, but also cultural diversity, in our teams and across our organization. It's a small company that we work at, but it's small but mighty, right? It has a lot of spirit. And we've seen as we've transformed it and elevated it, not just from a performance perspective, but just the quality of our products and what we're doing and the values and the culture of our company. I mean, it's just goodness all around. And so during the year of the pandemic, when we weren't taking these 16-hour flights and basically being on the road for months at a time, during that time, we were able to huddle and, have a discussion, a moment of introspection, if you will, where we were able to look back and say, wow, there's such a power in sisterhood. There's a power in a sisterhood of seekers. There's a power in a new philosophy for living and being able to be the example of what we want to see in the world. And so when we started just kind of looking at history and saying, hey, what has the history of women been, right? What does that look like? And then for example, how did we get to a point in our society in which women from the age of 45 and up are just kind of written off across every sector, right? And especially in entertainment, as you know, right? I remember when Madonna turned 50 and they were like, what next? And she's like, well, I'm not
Right.
planning my funeral. She said, I'm just getting started. And I remember seeing that, watching that at that time, not really understanding what she meant. But now, of course, this year was a big birthday. I turned 50. And in turning 50 and launching Crone Queen, thank you very much, and launching Crone Queen on International Women's Day, the way we positioned that platform was very much that it was a sisterhood of seekers. We're not in competition with anyone. We want to be able to celebrate women. And we've seen the power that comes when you have women that collaborate, that co-create, that support one another. Even if it's, I know a guy that knows a guy, right? It has the power to transform.
Sure.
And we said, hey, we don't have to accept, some of what we see in society. And I'll give you a really good example. So I worked in Silicon Valley for a short time, and I have a lot of friends who are there in high tech. And when I started hearing my mentors, I mean, these were women I respect and admire who were ahead of me, right? And so when they started sending advice along the lines of, hey, remove the date from your graduation from your university and maybe take some of your experience off because, ageism is alive and well and it's going to limit your opportunities. And when we started looking at some of the staggering metrics around if women in their 50s have to leave work to either take care of an aging parent or anything, when they come back, it's almost impossible to secure the same salary or secure the same job. So what we did is we sat back, and then when we looked at metrics for startups and the fact that only 2%, imagine this, Kevin, only 2% of all the funding, that goes into startups, only 2% goes to female-founded and female-led companies. And we said, hey, that is not okay with us. Right. And this is why Frances McDormand, who just won her second Oscar, I think, for best actress, basically has been on the road saying, hey, you know what? Enough is enough. It's not that women need to be supported. Women need funding. Women are strong. It's the way the world interprets that strength. And by the way, it's okay for us to have, who said that we can't have lines on our faces? Who said that we can't embrace the silver, the silver locks in our hair? And so what we did, again, is we just sat down and we said, okay, we've lived around the world. We have all of these different social circles, right? These posses of women, right? And we said, you know what? We're going to bring those women together and we're going to lift ourselves up and be the change that we want to see. And that is how Crone Queen came about.
So with that in mind, first of all, beautiful, and I'm glad you brought up Frances McDormand. I hadn't seen a ton of movies during the pandemic, but one of my I'm not going to call it a pipe dream. One of my visions in this next year, what I realized during the pandemic was that it's time for me to give up my safe space. My kids are grown. It's time for me to be nomadic, and so getting a vehicle that I can travel the world is really important to me. And I just loved that as a strong female character, that it didn't have to be the typical Hollywood storyline. I mean, sorry to kill the storyline, folks, if you haven't watched this, if you're watching, but it was a great movie. And what I loved was that it showed the struggle. There was a lot of single women in that movie that were represented having to, and there was an underlining, message there that I hadn't really thought about, but I think about each of those characters and the development. This was showing that struggle that, corporate America and, I know you're in Singapore, but I mean, the corporate environment in general has made it more difficult for women.
Absolutely. And Nomadland is beautifully shot. Nomadland is definitely worth the watch. We would recommend it to anybody. Frances McDormand is just absolutely transformative in that movie as well. And it's just so raw and real, so we highly recommend it.
So the authenticity, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, that's what Crone Queen's all about. And that's what, this discussion really is great to sort of focus on. When you guys formed that, and there's this collective bringing women together to realize their value, their worth, their limitless opportunities as a collective, how do you, I don't want to say target, but how do you bring them into your fold?
Well, I think, first we started with our network, right? Because we have a pretty large network that spans the world. And so first we started with our network, and whether it was from childhood or from recent memories, we targeted our network and we invited women who inspired us to create the movement of Crone Queen, and we celebrated them. So when we kicked off Crone Queen on social media, you literally had 3 profiles of women every single day from all around the world. So for example, a friend of ours, Aber Biese, who was in Lapland on a dog sledding safari. So you had imagery like that. And then you had, of course, Christine, who was in Menlo Park playing polo, and she's on a horse. The imagery was really just absolutely stunning. And it was every day, from everyday kitchen table conquerors all the way to women who are published, who are corporate warriors, who have their own companies, their own startups. And so and everything, if you will, in between around the globe, from Australia to Finland to the US and then across Asia. And Latin America, of course, with my Latin roots. And so, we celebrated those women, we brought them together, and we shared with them that, hey, whether you're in your first chapter, your second act, or your third act, whatever chapter that is, you are never done. And as you continue growing, go ahead and celebrate that journey, because you're getting better and better at being yourself as you get older, right? You're ultimately looking for your truest, most authentic self, because it leads to happiness, equanimity, authenticity, right? And that's how we actually came up with some of our the hashtags that we have, as well as the inspiration that they provide. And so, for example, we love words. Obviously, if you look at our website, we love words. And some of the words that we selected, and our CTO actually came up with this. He said, "Hey guys, did you know that the collective noun for fireflies is light posse?" I'm like, this is going to be our light posse, right? Because our content is very much about finding the light, seeing the light, being the light. So we were able to just very much take all of that and just kind of put it together, and it created this beautiful puzzle pieces of what Crone Queen is. And again, we believe there is space in this world for this. We are not in competition with anyone, and we want everybody to make it.
Yeah, I think what's been very interesting, Kevin, is that, yes, as we sort of went out to our existing network, that was the starting point. But what's happened as a result of that is, in that sharing and in that, sharing the light and elevating women, we've exponentially grown just as a result of that. So their friends have loved it. They've come in. And so we've exceeded, I guess, the expectation that we set for ourselves in terms of how many women would want to be part of this. But I also think that, this is so needed. Women want to connect authentically. They want to come together to discuss topics that are relevant to their age group. And so it's just been a beautiful, natural, organic evolution over the last few months, which we've really enjoyed just seeing unfold. And it's not had to come from Sara and I. It's actually taken on a life of its own.
Absolutely. A big part of that is that, born from this era, or this time that we have in our lives where there's so much divisiveness, right? I mean, there are so many differing opinions and perspectives worldwide. The COVID thing really isolated so many people too.
That's right.
Bringing people together, bringing women together to recognize that value. And as a collective, I mean, we all know that a power greater than one can certainly accomplish more things, right? Absolutely. And so you think about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. This is a perfect opportunity for people to see such a positive outlook. And you said that it's sort of taken on a life of its own. You've got the hashtag out there. You're wonderful marketers. I know, Sara, that's your baby. And I see that you've got fans there in the chat as well, which is not surprising. What I see when I look at your social media presences is that there's no, I want to choose the right terminology, because I told you I just had a guest on, Nefertari Plessy, who with this single moms advocate. She talked about this struggle that she had, where there was a really difficult challenge for her to become an entrepreneur with support, especially in the entertainment industry, as a single mom.
That's right.
Without with just the emphasis was for her was always on the aesthetic, right? And then there was the extra burden that she had. Okay, so a female if females are paid less oftentimes in the area of entertainment or in corporate world, and then she's got the additional sort of burden to have to overcome. That yes, she's beautiful, but people are surprised that she's not only a beautiful inside and out person, but she's intelligent and she's driven with kids, going out there, working twice as hard as most, as often other people. So what she was focusing on was to let women know that you don't have to be a victim, no matter what environment you're in. And so I would say that this also falls for men as well, that the pandemic affected, I would say every person on the planet's been affected by the pandemic. A lot of people have been so negatively impacted, myself included, where it was easy at some points to think about all those things we didn't have or we couldn't do. And getting that perspective shift onto looking at things that you can, because you can go the other, right? You can just be a victim and let the pandemic or anything else affect your life for the negative. But you've found a way to collectively empower women to see that path is not only, like far from, victim mentality, but also this pursuit of excellence, that, and I was talking about your social media presence. If you guys already know Sara, then you know that this woman loves life, and I see you on boats, on beaches, in extravagant parties, and with friends and collectives, always smiling. I don't know that I've ever seen a picture of you smiling, and I think you smiled the entire way on the plane.
I think so. It was a great conversation. Of course, how could I not?
Well, you know what? It's authentic though, because there are people that fake it till they make it, right? And so, Renee, if you guys hadn't known each other before this organization, because of your collective interest in this type of organization that you've done, would you have met and instantly hit it off outside of Crone Queen and outside of your current company?
Yeah, look, I'm a big believer in that everything happens for a reason. And I'll tell you a funny story about how I first met Sara. I mean, Sara is obviously very well put together. She's got this glamorous life on social media and outside of social media. And when we first moved to Singapore, our offices were a little more run down, and we actually had a bit of an ant problem in our boardroom. And we were just about to gut the office and renovate it. And Sara comes in like she looks now, dripping with jewelry and looking, the professional, put together woman that she is. And I'm like squatting ants from the table, trying to convince her to come and work for us. And so, I think that, ultimately it was, obviously I did a good sales job, so I'm very proud of myself. But ultimately, I think that the universe conspires to bring people together in very different ways. And I was, very pleased that Sara walked in my door that day. And obviously the last 2 years of knowing each other has taken us on many, many different journeys. So I think the universe did all the work for me.
I have to agree with you there, Renee. I have to agree with you there. And I think that was actually one of the posts that we did this week on Crone Queen, that no one comes into your life by accident. Everyone serves a purpose. And so, yes, it's wonderful to, have a business bestie like Renee, because, ultimately the objective of the movement, so I wouldn't even call it an organization. It's a movement. It is a collective. And in fact, in our website, we say, you can call it what you want to call it, because it's going to mean different things to different people depending on where you are in your life. But ultimately, whether it's the queendom, right, whether it's a club or a collective, whatever, right, at the end of the day, what we're telling people is, if your life is your message, what will your message be? Don't wait. Live the life that you want. It's never too late to say, this is what I want, and I'm going to go get it by working hard to make it happen. And it's all just kind of goodness that we're trying to shower into the world. And speaking of goodness, I want to give a just quick shout out to one of our queens, and that would be Stacey Lagala, who is on the West Coast of the United States and has tuned in. Hey, Stacey, thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Claudia as well, for all the comments. You're so enthusiastic and so engaged. I'm so impressed. Excellent.
Yeah, Mike Klaus there as well in the chat. Mike is a great supporter of the show, and of that community. He's a Portlander, and so he's always offering really positive perspective when we had a little troll there in the chat for a little bit, and they are all beating up on him. So that's trolls blocked and they're gone. But that's the thing when we have these authentic conversations, I typically don't block somebody out because I think it shows some ignorance when they're there, first of all. But I would imagine, right, that you're here empowering women, right? So everything you're doing is positive. For somebody to feel a little threatened by that, is it's not the first time it's happened to you, I'm sure. When you're in your organization, the comment that person making about saying, women's rights is a joke. That was their profile, right? And it's like saying human rights are a joke to me. And I think, okay, so what person in the right mind would say that? What human would say human rights are a joke? There may be some, that are just, they're, entitled and ignorant. And so the idea of educating the ignorant is, it's not our responsibility. It's not our job. I would hope that people can educate themselves. And, I mentioned, we don't talk politics or COVID or anything on the show. A lot of it is just because people need a break, right? It's, we're all exhausted from so much of that. But what I'll say is, speaking of exhausted, is that you guys have the uphill battle of saying, hey, women, look, you're capable of anything you want in life and more. The things that you may not have even had any idea you were capable of. You can do this. Our collective can give you some ideas. I mean, your blog is fantastic about mental health matters and just physical health matters and inspiring yourself and pushing yourself, taking a hold of those things that some people might be complacent. It's scary to do something different. It's scary to get outside your comfort zone, right? But the more often you do something, the less scary it gets, right? So I'd love to know from both of you guys. I mean, I can get a sense from you, Renee. You mentioned having started a startup early on with your husband, and I would like to know about some risks that you guys have taken to get to where you're at, because you're both incredible rock stars of the corporate environment, and you would never have gotten there had you not taken some risks. So can you tell me a little bit about yours first, Renee?
Yeah, gosh, there's been a lot of risks. I mean, obviously the biggest risk we took was the financial risk of stepping out of a comforting job with 2 young children and having no choice but to make it, because you've still got to put food on the table and provide for them and support the family. So when we first actually decided to go it alone together, I went back into corporate world to fund the development of our application and our software. And so I was doing that at the same time as on the side selling in the software that my husband was creating. So there was just the 2 of us for over a year. And then we slowly employed some other software engineers to accelerate the development. But all of that was self-funded. We actually bootstrapped for a year and a half, almost 2 years, before we got seed funding. And that seed funding then enabled me to come back into the business full time and really try and focus on growing it. But the sacrifices were financial. I mean, we moved, we rented a lot. We moved, I think, 14 times in 4 years because we were evicted because they sold the house, or they were rebuilding the units, or I mean, we just went through so much in terms of that. We obviously had 2 young children. I was traveling a lot for work, so I wasn't at home. So we compromised, and my mum left her job and came and worked to look after the kids, so at least I could focus on the road. So there was so many moving parts, and without her doing that, I don't think I could have really achieved what we achieved and traveled as much as I did, because I was working an hour after I had my daughter in the hospital. That's wow. I guess. I don't advise that, by the way. That was horrendous. Right. I do not advise doing that. I absolutely advise taking maternity leave and enjoying time with your newborn child. But that just wasn't a choice I had at that moment, because we were working in a startup and we were both, trying to grow it and support our family. So those are the types of juggles and sacrifices that you make along the way. And even stepping in and selling our business, deciding to be the CEO of this company has had other sacrifices. I've still been on the road a lot. And so up until the pandemic started, I would fly my mum to Singapore every 6 weeks, and she would be here to support the children going to school. So they had a level of stability. And yes, you know, at that point in my life, I'd gone through the financial struggles and the challenges. So I was in a position where I could do that. But still, it gave me the level of comfort I needed as a professional to go and be able to focus on my job. So there's always, you know, compromises and challenges. And fortunately, my husband doesn't have to travel as much for work. So he's sort of that constant in the kids' lives. But I have to say that's one of the things I have enjoyed this last 12 months is being in one place, being able to, you know, be with my children and to spend quality time together. And that's something that I'm cherishing, because I haven't actually done that for many, many years. In fact, since my daughter was born. So, and she's 10. So, you know, those are the sacrifices that you make.
You know, I like that that you recognize that they were sacrifices. Sometimes people in the corporate world are so caught up in that don't make family a priority. You know, and you know, obviously that wasn't the case when you're working an hour after having your child. But I recognize, you know, as a startup, right? You do what you have to do to survive, and yep. So I applaud you. It's that's more than sacrifice. How about you, Sarah? Tell me about some of your risks.
You know what? I think, in listening to Renee speak, I think it takes a lot of grit, right? Number one, to take the risk, and then the next one, to work 3 jobs while you're trying to get your startup going, right? Yeah. While also having a family. I think it takes an unbelievable amount of mental fortitude, discipline, you name it. It's a lot of sacrifices. And so as I was listening to Renee, I was thinking, and I was thinking about the community. I think that, you know, when I think of Crone Queen and I look at the community of women that are in there, right, and the different stories that each of them has, and they're powerful, powerful stories, right, like beating cancer and then getting on with life afterwards. When I look at those, the thing that comes to mind is that there isn't a single individual in this world, both female and male, who hasn't made, you know, some sacrifice in their life, or taken some risk, right, to lead the life that they want to live. And so, you know, I look at my life and I know there were a lot of course there were a lot of risks. Saying that you're going to move, you know, you're going to leave your home country and go to another country is high risk. And I've done that many times during the course of my career, mostly for work. And I think that not only is it a risk, but you have to have that adventurous spirit to be able to do it and to acclimate, right? To be able to move to another country, figure out how that country runs, and then, you know, work while also kind of living in that country. And so I think, but it's always been worth it, right? More times than not. And I think, you know, there's reward in failure, right? There's success in failure. And I think that when you are able to live a life in which you're saying, I'm going to be fearless, I'm going to take risks and not be afraid to fail. As long as you fail fast and move on and learn from that failure. Many of those failures, by the way, are transformative. They end up defining your life and leading you where you need to go. So all of that is goodness. Now, I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned a moment ago when we were talking about the troll, right? And what I was going to say to you, Kevin, is I think it's very apt and very smart of you, especially after the last year or the last few years that we've come from, and with kind of the tonality and spirit of the internet and how it has been transformed and changed. I think it's important to be able to say, hey, where am I going to put my energy? And what's worth it? If you have a troll who has nothing more than keyboard courage behind him, there's really no point in responding. You know, instead, it's better served to put your energy into being heliotropic, right? You know, like sunflowers follow the sun. Put your face to the light. You know, act out of faith over fear. You know, every single time. And this is why, as you mentioned a moment ago, yes, you know, as you can tell from my feed, I try to paint everything with a positive brush. I think it always gives me a better result. That doesn't mean that there aren't moments of difficulty and challenge, right? But we get through them simply by saying, hey, you know, I'm going to work through it to get to the other side. And that's really very much kind of what our community also encompasses.
That's a beautiful perspective to have. I mean, and it is about perspective, right? I mean, if we talked about the victim mentality, I know certainly so many people in the music industry that take for granted what they have, right? I'm very, very fortunate to be in a position where I've got a web design business as well, right? So I was able to somehow supplement income that way without having any gigs for 15 months. And But the people that did have gigs, like people that do, they've had their hits in the 80s, and there's a resurgence of 80s music right now. There are so many more opportunities right now. We have so many amazing shows coming up, and I feel blessed. I love being able to go out and interact with those people and thank them for being there. I see a lot of my contemporaries that somehow feel like they take it for granted. And I don't want to say entitled, but they look at things as an obligation. They don't see how fortunate we are to still be doing this. And I know that sounds silly to be like, oh my gosh, I have to go back on stage again, and I have to go play in front of but it's it becomes mundane to them, and it's mundane because the perspective is in the negative, right? So point your eyes to the sun. That could be taken in any sort of environment, and corporate world, it's very easy to get stuck in a cycle where perhaps you have the golden handcuffs. And I left the corporate world like 16, 17 years ago, just to start my company and to continue to play music, on my own. I think if I had a corporate culture that was supportive and uplifting, then it may have stuck me around for a little while longer. But I know that a lot of people get complacent. They're afraid to leave, and a lot of them are afraid to take the risks that you talked about. There are people that are out there that are capable of startups. They're capable of doing something completely different. And I'm going to tie it back into Frances McDormand again, in Nomadland. I don't want to ruin the ending for folks, so plug your ears for a second. But the interesting thing that I really thought about was, yes, I mean, she was facing so many crises. This woman really was struggling through the whole thing. But at the end, she had an opportunity to give it all up, right? She could have the comforts of home, and the allure of being nomadic drew her in, right? And she wanted to go back out there again and face the struggle, because that is what she could take it. She figured out how to navigate that path. And so one of the really dynamic women that I've had on my show in the last couple months, rest her soul, was Tawny Katane. And Tawny, in the conversation that we had, we got close. It was amazing. She was on 2 days in a row. One of the things that I asked her was, in the movie about Tawny Katane, who would play your life? She said, Christina Applegate. She didn't have to think about it. She said she met her on the set of Married with Children, and she said Christina, while she played kind of a blonde bimbo on the show, was very intelligent, and I said, for me, the most amazing thing about her was that not only could she play a bunch of different roles, but when she had her cancer diagnosis, she instantly went in, had the double mastectomy, and publicized it so that it could take that stigma away from women. And since that, I had a lot of people contact me offline saying, thank you for taking that stigma away too, because men talking about this as if it's no big deal really helped me cope with it myself. Now, so there were a bunch of reasons why Tawny would have Christina play her, not just because she was a 80s bombshell or whatever. I'm interested in superheroes like you guys, and who would play the character of Renee Welsh when they make the movie about you.
Oh my goodness. I have absolutely no idea. I'll have to, I'm gonna defer to Sarah. I'll have to think about that one.
You have to think about who would play you. Someone who's shy and quiet, but then I know. Right?
Shy and quiet. I can already tell you who I think should play Sarah.
Oh, please!
But I want Sarah to tell me first. I want you to who's going to play Sarah Paz.
Actually, what I would say first and foremost is, may Tawny rest in peace. I was absolutely shocked to hear the news, and it seems like just yesterday that she was on your show. Yeah. And it was actually, I was really, because when I think of my youth and I think of the music videos, I always think of her, right, in the music videos. She was iconic. But anyway, so may she rest in peace, and, blessings to her family and whatnot. In terms of superheroes, I don't know if a superhero would play me, but I don't know who. What I would say is this.
Wait, I was saying,
tell me.
you guys are superheroes, and so I'm saying, to be that dynamic and that, because you can't have a meek, shy, like Dormouse playing either one of you. So, yeah. Right. So who is the Sarah Paz character?
I have to tell you something. When I think of the Sarah Paz character, I would think of like standing outside of myself. I would think of what is the word in Spanish is canija, right? And canija in Spanish means, an individual who does things differently or is bold in certain ways or is able to kind of maneuver certain things. And in Spanish, we would say when we see someone do something like that, we say canija, like, or just, and so I think it would, but if you look at the definition canija, it actually, the secondary part of it is like skinny, scrawny, and small and puny. So maybe that's, I don't know what, but I know that canija would be the essence of whatever. Maybe it's like, oh, I know, a Mexican Chihuahua named canija. That's it. That's what it's like. Done.
Wow, yeah.
That doesn't count.
I love, yeah. I would say that casting directors ought to be looking at you right now for those characters, to play. I thought of, Israeli army turned superhero Gal Gadot would be, or Gal Gadot would, but she's Israeli. She's not, well, she's Wonder Woman. That's what I think of when I think of Sarah Paz, right? So, how about this?
What a compliment. Thank you.
Well, I'm always fascinated anytime when I see somebody that's willing to step outside their comfort zone and go after what they believe to be their destiny, right? And I asked this question on the show a lot about legacy, and it's interesting because it's touchy now. I asked Tawny about that as well, and so when I think of legacy, some people might say, I'm already living it, right? But so Renee, you're a mother of two, a devoted wife, business CEO, and entrepreneur galore. At the end of your days, when you're looking back at your life, you're talking to your kids and your grandkids. What would you like them to reflect on as a legacy for Renee Welsh?
I think that it does come down to not being afraid to step outside your comfort zones and try new things and explore and be curious in your life, and don't be afraid to fail. That's definitely the legacy I would like to leave my children and my grandchildren, if I have any, or just anyone that works for me, actually, is just, I think that people underestimate themselves all the time. And so to be able to elevate them and allow them to find, that piece of magic or find their confidence or whatever they need is really rewarding for me. And so that would be, being able to support people. And I think that that's really the impetus for Crone Queen as well, is how can I do that on a bigger scale? And, how can we really make a difference to the world? So that would be my legacy.
Okay. I like it. How about you, Sarah?
When you say the term legacy, I think of leaving behind something that's really meaningful, right? Yeah. And when I look at Crone Queen, and at least what the dream of it is, okay, the dream of this small but mighty community, I would really like and hope that at the end of my road that I'll be able to look back and say, wow, at least some people were touched by this. Some people were elevated. Some people found the bravery, the heart, and the courage to do what they wanted to do. Some people found the courage to be able to say, hey, I'm on the wrong road. I need to find myself another path, right? And have the courage to do it. And when you look at Crone Queen, it's not only the community, and it's an accessible community. That's what was really important to us. So as you mentioned, some of the content that we cover content that isn't covered in media, right? The content that basically says we're gonna apply a few myth busters here. For example, one is money, right? Women are bad with money. Actually, women make better investors than men because they're able to multitask and look at things on a wider scale versus just a narrow scale. And so when we took a look at this, we said, okay, that's the kind of content we want. We want to cover content that is being covered by anyone. And at the same time, we want to have events that transform people. And by the way, the experts that are providing the content are doing so for free. Okay. They're like volunteering their time. And so to this, because that's their contribution, it's, as Renee mentioned, it's sweat equity, right? And so it'll include products as well, and a lot of woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
Spirituality.
Exactly. We like the woo-woo.
We love the woo-woo. And we're corporate warriors, but we love the woo-woo.
Yeah. I think the content, sorry, Kevin, the content informs the conversation and the authentic conversation around the life chapter that anyone's in. And I think that was the important piece, and how we built the content was around the conversations we could have with it. And some of that content is pretty deep and raw, and others are, inspirational and lighthearted, but that's, there's always different facets to what we're going through in any given day. So
I think it's fascinating content. Sara, you just talked about events as well. That you wanted the events to have that span and that inspiration. Right now, it didn't look like there were any current events on the Crone Queen site, but I'm interested to know, tell me about, in thinking about growth, because you know that what you'd like to do is have a worldwide collective of every woman on the planet being part of Crone Queen's, mission
movement.
But on the way, right, as you're accomplishing that goal, tell me about the types of events that you'd like to have in order to progress.
Okay, so thank you so much for asking that, and thank you also for noticing that there aren't any events planned. At the moment in Singapore, we are going through a second wave of, I don't want to call it a complete lockdown, but it's basically you can't have more than 2 people together anywhere at one time, right?
Amazing.
And so, as a result of that, we cannot have events at the moment, hopefully by summer. And I have to tell you, the events that we want to put on will be events that will be illuminating, right? They will include concepts and it'll include everything from, like I said, financial before, I said legal matters as well, and things that women should be thinking about. How do you set up your will? How do you set up your trust? What are the things that are important? What if you die tomorrow? Do you have everything set up so that somebody can find it and just be like, okay, I'm ready to go. I know what she wanted. As well as including wellness. Right. And so I know that adaptogens right now is very much on the forefront, but the application thereof and how to take them is not clear. And so this is why we have a nurse, a practitioner who basically, and as everybody knows, a nurse practitioner has the ability to write prescriptions in the United States and can actually be a general, like a GP. And so we have these experts, if you will, that will come together in those sessions and have hopefully, transformative experiences. And then of course you're going to have the sound bath. You're going to have the sound bath. You're going to have a shaman. It's going to be sensational.
Some of those things obviously you can't do virtual then, especially, so virtual events, I'm sure that you've studied, the sort of the outcome of those to see how successful in certain environments, it definitely works. And in this year, we've seen what works and what doesn't.
That's right.
I think what I can imagine the workplace environment for you, both, with Crone Queen assemblage of women, but also just, your workplace environment, your corporate culture. You mentioned that there's gender parity, right? You've got 50%, in the leadership roles.
That's right.
What is I mean, you could be honest. I will tell you, I worked for a big tech company for quite some time that started off, the corporate culture was fantastic, very family driven. They encouraged inspiration, education. They really wanted the growth of their employees, because they knew that not only would they stick around longer and they'd appreciate it, but also that the company would be better educated, and likely to want to stay. After the tech crash, after 9/11, really things changed, and you saw that the focus was more about the bottom line, about money, and it was a few years for me to stick it out, and I saw some companies still try to maintain, like during the pandemic. I've talked to companies that actually want to support their employees. They said, you know what, you don't come in, right? Your job is safe. You know, if you can work remotely, that's great. If not, your job will still be safe here. Tell me about how you've kept your corporate culture, especially through this wave of crazy pandemic, like, disruption.
Yeah, I mean, it's been challenging, particularly because I haven't been able to travel as much as I did. I mean, one of my favorite things to do was travel to all of our offices and be able to walk around the office and connect with our teams. And, obviously we just haven't been able to do that as much. And our executive team are all over the world. So obviously we're on Teams and Zoom and, video conferences all day, every day, which can be, exhausting as well. But at the end of the day, we've done a number of initiatives to try and keep the culture as tight as we can. I've done fireside chats, so I have like small groups of 4 to 5 people across the organization that I talk to, and just have a conversation with to see how they're going, what's happening in their lives, for them to ask me any question that they like. We've just started that initiative. Look, I have to say the beginning of the pandemic was sort of a turbulent time for all of us, and we were trying to find our way. So, business survival and crisis management was top of mind, as was, most importantly, the health and safety of our team. We only have a small team globally, so we were very early to the party in sending everyone home, making sure everyone could work from home effectively, and our supply chain could still operate as effectively as it could. But we have over 3,000 clients globally, and all of them shut down within 6 weeks. So just bam, lights out overnight. So with that comes, complications as well, to make sure that we're supporting the recovery. But I'm really proud of the initiatives that we doubled down on our communication. We doubled down on our initiatives. We're very creative. We pivoted. We created new product lines. We created white papers around how businesses could recover, what they could do through the pandemic, how they could communicate with their customers. So I think that, all things considered, we've done a pretty exceptional job for a small tech company. But at the same time, it's still challenging now that the US is sort of recovering to a degree and going through a great period, which I'm so grateful for. It's challenging not being able to be there and still sort of have the video chats and everything when everything is sort of recovering over there. So that's the new evolution and the new phase that we're going through, and we're still navigating that. But overall, we've got our company values in place, and I think communication and over communication, you just can't estimate that. So it's been a big part of what we've done.
That's right.
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, that's right. We're definitely on the road to recovery, without question, as Renee said. And I think that early on, so people are still, by the way, still working from home, like in the United States and across the globe. Our Dubai office, all our Australia offices, as well as Singapore, everyone is working from home because we're being, because again, the safety of our employees is number one. And given that we are on this, road to recovery, I think early on, in order to maintain our spirit and the values and the core of who we are, not only did we communicate, but it was what we were communicating to our employees. We were telling them, and also the industry, hey, listen, tough times don't last, tough people do. We are going to maximize the opportunity in the now to come together, even if it's virtually, so that we can get through this, and together we will get through it. And so these were some of the messages, and this was some of the actions that we were taking to kind of still have that cohesion, even though we were apart. And there were a lot of great learnings. I mean, like I said, we had a lot of great learnings during that time. And so it's, we got nothing but good news. I mean, it's still tough times. We're still on the road to recovery. It's still challenging. But you know what? We can see that light at the end of the tunnel.
It's amazing that you're not a politician or, I mean, you're like an amazing, I was going to say drill sergeant, but they're gruff and tough. But you're just so great at it. You sound like you'd be great in any environment and just be able to inspire. I love it. I feel like I want to go out and kick some ass right now. But I ask you guys, then this is the fun part of the show. You've got employees that work for you that think they know Renee Welsh. They think that they have a good sense of who you are. But I'd love to know about your guilty pleasures. These are the things that you might you might be kind of embarrassed to admit, but it doesn't matter what it is, whether food, music, entertainment. But what would people be surprised to find out about Renee Welsh?
Take it away, Renee.
Yeah, Sarah's out here.
He's off. Okay, so what are my guilty pleasures? I think over the course of the last 12 months, definitely I'm a huge Netflix binger. Okay. I will watch, an entire series just for hours on end. What else?
Any
I think
particular stand out to you?
There's been a lot, actually. I've watched everything.
What's the last one that just rocked your world?
What's the name of it? It's the last thing that rocked my world.
Was it Queen's Gambit? Was it Halston?
I love Halston, actually. I just finished Halston and I loved that. Yeah, that was brilliant. And I binge watched that, yes.
Do you share Netflix tips?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah. You were reaching for another one too, Renee. You were looking for another guilty pleasure.
Oh, look, from a food perspective, I love anything sweet. So I will, I'll indulge in chocolate and cake and whatever I can get my hands on.
That's definitely.
Which is not great. It's
a vice of mine.
I've got to rein that in.
That's part of the guilty part, right? So no, how about you, Sarah?
You know what? I think, I never give you just kind of a straight answer. I just think that, in life, you get the yin and the yang, right? And so, while yes, we work really hard and, there's honestly like 80%, I feel like, actually, no, at any given time, we have different things at different times, right? We have different roles throughout life, right? And it just goes from moment to moment. But even if I look at my day, I'll say, you know what, I work, we work really, really hard. And so as a result of that, you want to play hard, right? I think that's what you see online, because you don't generally see me when I'm in my PJs and, scrunchy and glasses and a tub of ice cream with a laptop. But what you do see is the play hard, which is basically the having fun. And so to me, a guilty pleasure is sensational music, dancing. I don't care if I'm the only one dancing. I don't care if it's not a dance floor. Dancing with a drink in hand and just, throwing a band in and having fun. And so that's basically it.
Nothing guilty about that at all. Yeah, I've had a range. There was a big string of times where men and women alike were, it was The Bachelor, right? Watching The Bachelor.
Yes.
I had a string where people said listening to ABBA was their favorite, and I said, "There's nothing guilty about that." But anyway, I love to get that side of you, Renee and Sarah. The fact that she won't answer a question directly, but
I know.
Because I'm thinking that there's nobody that would really believe that she sits around in her PJs with a big tub of ice cream, but it just never happened. It may have happened, in another life.
Many times in bed working.
Okay,
it doesn't happen. Huh?
What's the ice cream choice then?
Oh God, I love ice cream, and so it's just honestly, it is usually anything that's a mint chocolate or anything that like a praline pecan. I mean, don't get me started. I could just get down. Equal opportunity. Ben and Jerry's, Haagen-Dazs. I will. I don't discriminate.
It's great that you can get it all there in Singapore too. So ladies, listen. This means a lot to me for you to be here, guys. If you're watching this in the chat and watching this on the other platforms, if you're watching anything other than YouTube, I would love it if you would jump over there and subscribe to this channel. I'm putting the link below. It's youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. Way too many names and letters in there, but if you subscribe to it and hit the bell, you can go back and watch this fascinating conversation with Renee Welsh and SARA PAZ, and you'll be notified about the new upcoming episodes. I think we're closing in on 200 since this pandemic started in May. Yeah, wow. It really is. It's been so interesting to me to meet such dynamic people like you. Guys, if you do subscribe, come back tomorrow. This time, host, rock and drummer, worked with the Cult and Power Man 5000. And Friday, Tom Weber, Edward Van Halen's guitar tech. He'll talk about the late great Eddie Van Halen and his impact on the music industry. So, SARA PAZ, Renee Welsh, you get to go back and nap if you want to. Sarah's actually going to go do a flamenco.
She's going to dance in the
Exactly.
I love that dress. That is amazing, and the painting behind you is incredible too. So, and it looks like Renee has a gorgeous living quarters and work environment, so you can work and play at the same time. Thank you guys so much,
Kevin.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for watching. Have a beautiful weekend, and I will look forward to connecting with you on social media.
See ya.